The ocean has swallowed many ships, but submarines vanish in a silence all their own. Beneath the surface, there are no witnesses, no drifting sails on the horizon, no smoke rising from wreckage, only steel hulls descending into darkness, and sometimes never returning. A submarine sent into tropical war waters, lost for more than a century before the sea finally gave back its body, but not its final answer. A massive cruiser-submarine, unlike almost anything ever built, disappearing in wartime confusion, somewhere between collision, misidentification, and rumor. A patrol vessel bound for Panama, possibly destroyed by the very forces meant to protect it. Another submarine entering a sea of mines, mechanical trouble, and enemy reports, before its last known position dissolved into silence. These are not legends of ghost fleets or sailor superstition. They are real vessels, real crews, real disappearances, investigated by navies, recorded in archives, and remembered by families who are left with only fragments. So settle in. Tonight, we descend below the surface, into a world of pressure, darkness, secrecy, and unanswered signals, because some mysteries are not found drifting on the waves. Some are sealed inside the deep. Let's begin. Some mysteries begin with violence, with wreckage, with a final signal breaking apart over the air. But others begin with silence. A ship leaves harbor in the morning. It is seen in the distance, moving steadily through calm tropical water. Its crew has no reason to believe they are sailing into history. No one on shore knows they are watching the last hours of a vessel that will soon become a ghost. And then, by evening, it is gone. No explosion is heard. No oil slick is found. No debris washes ashore. No final message survives. Only the sea remains, smooth and indifferent, as if nothing unusual has happened at all. This is the story of HMASAE-1, Australia's first submarine, a fragile machine of early underwater warfare that vanished in 1914 off what is now Papua New Guinea, carrying 35 men into the depths. For more than a century, AE-1 was not just missing. It was absent in a way that felt almost deliberate. Searchers returned again and again to the waters around the Duke of York Islands, scanning reefs, channels, slopes, and shadowed basins. They followed old bearings, eyewitness fragments, wartime reports, and theories that shifted with every generation. But the submarine remained hidden, lying somewhere beneath tropical blue water, as though the ocean had closed over it and refused to give it back. Then, after 103 years, the wreck was finally found. And yet, like so many mysteries recovered from the deep, its discovery did not fully end the story. Because finding AE-1 answered one question: where did it go? But it left another, more haunting question still suspended in the dark. Why did it never come back? The story begins in the early years of the Royal Australian Navy, when Australia was still defining its place within the British Empire, and the modern age of naval power was changing faster than anyone could fully understand. In the years before the First World War, the sea was no longer ruled only by great battleships and cruisers. Beneath them, a new kind of vessel was emerging, smaller, stranger, and far more unsettling: the submarine. To the public, submarines were symbols of the future. They were machines that seemed to belong halfway between science and nightmare. Vessels that could disappear beneath the waves and strike from below without warning. But to the men who served inside them, they were cramped, difficult, dangerous machines filled with fuel fumes, battery acid, hot metal, damp air, and constant risk. Early submarines were not the sleek, silent hunters of later wars. They were experimental creatures. They had diesel engines for the surface and electric motors for underwater travel. They needed to dive and surface by carefully balancing air, ballast, buoyancy, valves, trim, and timing. Every hatch, vent, gauge, and order mattered. A mistake that might have been minor on a surface ship could become fatal in a submarine within seconds. A E-1 was one of two E-class submarines acquired for the young Australian fleet, alongside her sister AE-2. Built in Britain and sent across the world, they represented ambition, modernity, and imperial reach. They were proof that Australia's Navy was not merely ceremonial, but entering a new technological age. But they were also delicate by the standards of what would come later. Inside AE-1, men lived and worked inside a narrow steel tube packed with machinery. There was little comfort. Space was limited. Air could become stale. Heat could become oppressive, especially in the tropics. The submarine's crew had to trust not only their officers, but every seal, every valve, every pressure gauge, and every unseen part of the hull around them. When AE-1 reached Australian service in 1914, the world was already moving toward war. That same year, Europe ignited. The assassination in Sarajevo became a diplomatic crisis. The crisis became mobilization. Mobilization became invasion. And soon, Britain was at war with Germany. Because Australia was part of the British Empire, it too entered the conflict. But for Australia, the First World War did not begin only in the trenches of Europe. It began in the Pacific. Germany held colonies and wireless stations across the region, including in German New Guinea. These stations mattered because they could support German naval operations and communications across the Pacific. So in the opening weeks of the war, Australian forces moved quickly to seize them. AE-1 and AE-2 were sent north as part of this effort. They entered waters that were beautiful, remote, and dangerous in ways maps could not fully explain. Around New Britain and the surrounding islands, the sea was not an empty plain. It was a maze of volcanic slopes, coral reefs, deep channels, shifting currents, sudden shallows, and water so clear it could deceive the eye. Islands rose green and humid from the ocean. Mountains stood behind them. Rain clouds gathered and dissolved. Beneath the surface, the seabed fell away into darkness. For a submarine in 1914, this was not a forgiving environment. There were no satellite fixes, no modern sonar displays, no digital charts glowing inside a control room, no rescue systems waiting nearby. A submarine that got into trouble might have only minutes to save itself, and if it sank beyond reach, the sea could erase it completely. In September of 1914, Australian forces captured Rabaul, a key centre in German New Guinea. It was one of Australia's first major operations of the war. The campaign had gone quickly, and on the surface, it appeared successful. The German positions were taken. The wireless station was neutralised. The Empire had secured a strategic foothold. But almost immediately after that success, tragedy arrived. On the morning of September 14, 1914, AE-1 left Blanche Bay near Rabaul. She was to patrol the waters around Cape Gazelle and the Duke of York Islands, accompanied for part of the day by the destroyer HMAS Parramatta. The weather was not described as extreme. This was not a voyage into a typhoon. There was no known battle raging around her. No enemy submarine was waiting below. No great surface engagement was unfolding. It should have been a routine wartime patrol. But routine is one of the most dangerous words in maritime history, because the sea has a habit of turning ordinary voyages into mysteries. A E-1 moved through tropical waters under the command of Lieutenant Commander Thomas Besant. Her crew was made up of Royal Australian Navy and Royal Navy personnel, men brought together inside a machine that was still new, still unforgiving, still demanding absolute discipline. They would have been surrounded by heat. The interior of the submarine, even in ordinary conditions, could become oppressive. Diesel engines warmed the air. Metal held the temperature. Bodies, machinery, batteries, fuel, and electrical systems all shared the same narrow space. On the surface, crews often tried to ventilate whenever possible, bringing in fresh air through openings designed to make life inside more tolerable. This detail, small and ordinary, would later become one of the most important clues in the entire mystery. During the patrol, AE-1 was seen by Parramatta. The two vessels were operating in the same region, moving through waters that looked peaceful from above. At some point, AE-1 went on alone. Then the day began to fade. By evening, AE-1 had not returned. At first, concern may have been measured. Submarines could be delayed. Communications were limited. Navigation in island waters could be complicated. But as the hours passed, the absence became impossible to ignore. A submarine was missing. Ships were sent out to search. The waters near Cape Gazelle and the Duke of York Islands were examined. Lookouts scanned the surface for any sign of the boat. A periscope, floating wreckage, men in the water, oil, bubbles, anything. But there was nothing. No message, no distress flag, no debris field, no survivors. A E-1 had vanished with every man aboard. And in that instant, Australia suffered one of its first great tragedies of the First World War. The loss was made more painful by its uncertainty. When a ship is destroyed in battle, grief at least has a shape. There is a place, an enemy, a cause, a moment. But AE-1 offered none of that. It disappeared into warm blue water and left behind a silence so complete that it would last for generations. For the families of the 35 men, the loss must have felt almost unbearable. There was no grave to visit, no body returned, no final letter from the deep, no confirmed account of courage, panic, error, or fate. Only a name on a list, and the knowledge that somewhere far away, beneath a tropical sea most would never see, their son, husband, brother, or father had gone down inside a submarine that no one could find. For decades, AE-1 became a wound inside Australian naval history. It was the Royal Australian Navy's first major wartime loss. It was also one of the earliest submarine losses of the First World War. And because it had happened so quickly, so quietly, and so completely, it took on an almost mythic quality. Theories began to form. Perhaps AE-1 had struck an uncharted reef. The waters around New Britain and the Duke of York Islands are complex, with volcanic geology and reefs that could be difficult to interpret in 1914. A submarine running on the surface or at periscope depth might have encountered a hazard. A collision with the seabed or coral could have damaged the hull or diving planes, leaving the submarine unable to recover. But if AE-1 had struck a reef in shallow water, why was no wreckage found? Why did no oil appear? Why did no survivors reach shore? Why did later searches in likely reef areas turn up nothing? Another theory suggested enemy action. The disappearance occurred during wartime in a region recently held by Germany. Could AE-1 have been attacked? Could a German vessel, shore battery, mine, or hidden defensive measure have destroyed her? But this explanation never rested on strong evidence. There was no confirmed enemy engagement. No German report emerged claiming the sinking. No battlefield debris was found. And AE-1's disappearance did not carry the marks of a known combat loss. Then came the theory of mechanical failure. This was, in many ways, the most plausible from the beginning. AE-1 was an early submarine, and early submarines were inherently dangerous. Flooding, trim failure, battery problems, engine trouble, ventilation errors, or hull damage could all turn fatal. A submarine did not need an enemy to be lost. It only needed one system to fail at the wrong moment. A valve left open, a hatch not fully secured, a sudden dive that went too deep, a loss of buoyancy, a mistake made in heat, fatigue, or poor visibility. Any of these could have ended AE-1. But the problem was always the same. Without the wreck, there was no proof. And without proof, AE-1 remained less like an accident and more like a question. The first serious searches began many decades later, long after the men who had known the crew personally had grown old or passed away. Searchers studied naval reports, old sightings, and possible patrol routes. They tried to reconstruct the submarine's final hours from fragments, but the region itself resisted certainty. The ocean floor around the Duke of York Islands is not simple. It can drop steeply. It can hide wrecks in silt, shadow, and rugged terrain. Coral and volcanic formations create confusing sonar returns. Later wreckage from the Second World War added more metal ghosts to the seabed. Ships and aircraft had gone down in these waters for many reasons, leaving searchers to distinguish one lost machine from many others. Again and again, expeditions searched. Again and again, AE-1 was not found. The mystery endured through changes in technology. Sonar improved. Underwater vehicles became more capable. Historical research became sharper. But the submarine remained absent. And with each failed search, the legend deepened. Some mysteries become famous because of what is seen. AE-1 became haunting because of what was not. For 103 years, it was a missing shape beneath the sea. Then, in December 2017, a new search began using modern survey equipment in the waters off the Duke of York Islands. The search vessel Fugro Equator scanned the seabed with technology far beyond anything available to the first rescuers in 1914. Multi-beam sonar and underwater imaging allowed searchers to see the bottom in ways earlier generations could only imagine. And then, after more than a century, an object appeared. It lay in more than 300 meters of water. A long, narrow form on the seabed. When cameras descended, the mystery finally became visible. You are watching the screen in the dim light of the search vessel, surrounded by the soft electronic hum of equipment and the quiet tension of people who have learned not to speak too soon. Outside, far below the hull, the camera is descending through layers of blue that slowly become black. The seabed begins to resolve in fragments. Pale sediment, shadowed contours, shapes that might be rock or wreckage or nothing at all. Then a form emerges. At first, it is only a line against the bottom. Long, dark, too deliberate to be coral. The camera drifts closer, and the shape gathers meaning piece by piece. A hull, a curve of metal, a submarine sitting upright in the deep. For a moment, the room seems to hold its breath. You are not looking at an object anymore. You are looking at the end of a 103-year search. There was AE-1. The submarine was upright, largely intact, resting in the darkness where no human eye had seen it since 1914. After all the speculation, all the failed searches, all the theories and memorials and unanswered family grief, the lost submarine was no longer simply an absence. It was real again. The images were haunting. A E-1 did not look like a shattered ruin scattered across the seabed. It looked like a vessel that had reached the bottom and stayed there, sealed in silence. Its hull was still recognizable. Its shape was unmistakable. Marine growth clung to it. The ocean had softened it, darkened it, claimed it, but had not destroyed its identity. For Australia, the discovery was profound. A century-old naval mystery had finally been located. A war grave had been found. The men who had vanished were no longer somewhere unknown. Their resting place had returned from legend into geography. But the discovery also opened a new and delicate phase of the investigation. Because now the wreck itself could speak, not in words, but in angles, openings, damage patterns, and the position of machinery. Experts studied the submarine carefully, looking for clues to the final moments. And one detail stood out. A ventilation valve or shaft appeared to be open, or at least not fully closed. This mattered because submarines on the surface needed ventilation. In tropical heat, with diesel engines running and men confined inside a steel hull, fresh air was not a luxury. It was necessary for comfort, endurance, and safe operation. But when a submarine dived, openings that connected the inside of the boat to the outside sea had to be secured. If a ventilation valve was left open or failed to close properly, water could flood into the submarine when it submerged. And in a submarine, flooding does not need to begin dramatically. It can start as a sudden rush in one compartment, a shout, a scramble to close a valve, a shift in trim, a loss of control. Then the submarine grows heavy, the bow dips, or the stern sinks. Men fight valves, pumps, ballast, engines, and depth. Orders are shouted in a cramped, darkening tube. The boat descends faster than it should. Gauges climb. The hull begins to groan. And below a certain depth, the sea stops being water and becomes force. A E-1's designed operating depth was far shallower than where it was found. If flooding caused the submarine to lose control and sink past its safe limit, the pressure would have become overwhelming. At some point, the hull may have failed catastrophically. The crew would have had little chance. The end, if it came that way, may have been sudden. This theory has become one of the strongest explanations for AE-1's loss. It is grounded in the evidence of the wreck. It matches the known dangers of early submarines. It fits the tropical conditions that may have encouraged ventilation. And it explains why there was no distress call, no survivors, and no debris on the surface. But even this explanation does not remove every shadow. Was the valve left open by human error? Did it fail mechanically? Was AE-1 diving deliberately, perhaps to practice or avoid something? Was there a sudden emergency that forced a rapid dive before every opening was secured? Did the crew know what was happening in time to react? Or did the submarine slip from routine operation into disaster so quickly that no one fully understood until the sea was already pouring in? The wreck can suggest. It cannot remember. There are other details that complicate the picture. Some observations of the wreck indicated that parts associated with the bow and stern torpedo tube coverings were open or partly open, raising questions about whether AE-1 had been prepared for combat or operating in a heightened state of readiness. That does not prove she was attacked, but it reminds us that this was wartime. The crew were not on a training cruise in peaceful waters. They were patrolling a recently contested colonial region in the opening weeks of a global conflict. They may have been alert. They may have been cautious. They may have been tired. And they were operating a difficult machine in unfamiliar waters. One can imagine the final afternoon. The sea above is bright, blue, and warm. Islands rise in the distance. On the surface, AE-1's dark hull cuts through the water, diesel engines carrying her through the patrol area. Inside, men move through heat and metallic noise. Some are at gauges, some are near engines, some are waiting for orders, listening to the ordinary sounds of the submarine around them. Sounds they know so well that any change might be noticed instantly. Then the order comes to dive. Or perhaps the boat begins a maneuver. The crew moves quickly. Valves are checked. Ballast changes. The submarine lowers herself beneath the surface. The tropical light fades from the conning tower. Green water closes over the hull. For a moment, everything may seem normal. Then something is wrong. Water where water should not be. A rush of sea into a space meant for air. Men turn toward the sound. The boat grows heavier. The depth gauge continues to move. Perhaps they try to blow ballast. Perhaps they try to reverse the dive. Perhaps pumps start. Perhaps orders echo through the steel cylinder. But in the narrow world of an early submarine, there is no room for chaos, and yet no way to escape it. The ocean outside does not care how new the Navy is. It does not care that the war has barely begun. It does not care that 35 men are fighting for the surface. The submarine sinks. Light disappears. Pressure builds. And then AE-1 passes beyond the limit between danger and no return. This is the most likely story. But the word likely is not the same as certain. And that is why AE-1 remains haunting even after its discovery. Because the wreck lies at the bottom, but the final moments remain sealed inside. There is no recovered log from the last dive, no surviving witness, no message scratched onto metal, no voice recording, no final signal. Only the position of a valve, the depth of a wreck, the shape of damage, and the silent logic of engineering. The ocean gave back the submarine's location. It did not give back the experience of the men inside. In that sense, AE-1 is a mystery only half solved. The long disappearance ended in 2017, but the human mystery remains. The families can know where the submarine rests. Historians can mark the map. The Navy can honor the grave. But no one can say with complete certainty what each man heard, saw, or understood in the last minutes. And perhaps that is why the story lingers. AE-1 was a machine of the future lost almost as soon as the future began. It belonged to an age when empires stretched across oceans, when submarines were still new and frightening, when war expanded into distant islands most people in Europe or Australia could barely picture. It carried men into a theatre of conflict that felt remote from the trenches and battlefields that would later define the First World War. And it vanished not in a famous battle, but in a quiet patrol among tropical islands. For more than a century, its absence became part of the sea. Fishermen passed over it without knowing. Storms moved above it. Reefs grew nearby. Wars came and went. Generations were born, aged, and died. And all the while, AE-1 remained below, resting in darkness, its crew still at their posts in the imagination of a nation that had never stopped looking. Today, the wreck is treated as a war grave, and rightly so. It is not merely an archaeological object. It is the resting place of 35 men who disappeared during service, inside a vessel that was both pioneering and perilous. To look at AE-1 now is to confront the strange double nature of discovery. There is relief in finding what was lost, but there is also a deeper sadness. Because when a long-lost wreck is found, the mystery does not vanish. It changes shape. It becomes more intimate. No longer are we imagining a submarine somewhere in an endless ocean. We are looking at it directly, sitting upright in the dark, and realizing that the answer we wanted most may still be unreachable. The submarine is there. The men are there. The sea has finally revealed the place. But the final moment remains beyond us. Was it a valve? A mechanical failure? A rushed dive? A mistake made under tropical heat and wartime pressure? Or a chain of small events, each survivable on its own, that came together in the exact wrong order? The wreck rests quietly off the Duke of York Islands, far below the bright surface, in water that once seemed to swallow it without a trace. And perhaps, in the end, that is what makes AE-1 so haunting. Not that it disappeared, but that after 103 years, when the ocean finally allowed us to find it, the submarine still kept its last secret, a steel shadow from the first year of the Great War, Australia's first submarine, found at last beneath the tropical sea, and still not fully explained. Story 2. The giant French cruiser submarine that vanished in wartime darkness. Not all submarines vanish in their youth. Some disappear after they have already become legends. AE-1 belonged to the fragile beginning of the submarine age, a narrow steel experiment sent into tropical water before anyone truly understood how unforgiving the undersea world could be. Its mystery was quiet, almost intimate. A young navy, a small crew, a patrol that should have ended before dusk. But the next shadow we follow is different. It was not small, it was not modest, and it was not simply lost at the edge of empire. It was a giant conceived in ambition, armed like a surface warship, and sent into a world where loyalty, fear, and identification could shift with the darkness. In photographs, it hardly looks real. A submarine with the length and presence of a cruiser, carrying a gun turret on its back like some steel animal built for a future that never quite arrived. Its name was Surcouf, and when it vanished in February 1942, it did not leave behind one clean explanation. It left behind a collision that may or may not have been fatal. A dark shape struck in Caribbean waters, voices heard in the night, a possible friendly fire attack, and a wartime atmosphere so tense that even the truth, if it surfaced for a moment, may have been mistaken for an enemy contact and buried again. This is the story of Surcouf, the giant French cruiser submarine that disappeared in wartime darkness. To understand Surcouf, we have to begin with the strange dream that created it. After the First World War, the navies of the world were still trying to imagine what submarines might become. They had already proven themselves as hidden hunters, capable of stalking ships from beneath the waves. But there were designers who believed submarines could be more than torpedo boats. They imagined undersea cruisers, vessels able to travel vast distances, operate alone, attack commerce, scout for fleets, and even fight on the surface with heavy guns. France wanted reach, prestige, a machine that could defend sea lanes and project power across the far edges of its empire. Surcouf was the answer. Laid down at Cherbourg in the late 1920s and launched in 1929, it was named after Robert Surcouf, the French privateer whose legend was built on daring attacks in the Age of Sail. The name was fitting. This submarine was not designed merely to hide. It was designed to raid, to appear, strike, vanish, and carry the aura of a corsair into the mechanical century. Even by the standards of naval experimentation, Surcouf was extraordinary. It was more than 360 feet long, enormous for a submarine of its time, and on the surface it looked less like a concealed dagger than a strange, low warship that had somehow learned to dive. Its most famous feature was impossible to miss: a twin 8-inch gun turret mounted forward of the conning tower. These were not light deck guns. They were weapons associated with heavy cruisers. Surcouf could surface, bring its guns to bear, and attack merchant ships without spending torpedoes. It could carry out long patrols, capture crews, launch a small reconnaissance float plane from a watertight hangar, and operate far from home like a self-contained raider. In concept, Surcouf was not just a submarine. It was a hidden cruiser, a privateer made of steel, a warship from an alternate future. But the reality was always more complicated. Its size made it impressive, but also awkward. Its guns were powerful, but using them meant surfacing, and a surfaced submarine was vulnerable. Its aircraft was innovative, but fragile. Every strength came with a question. Was Surcouf a masterpiece or an elegant mistake? Then came 1940. France fell, and Surcouf, like France itself, was pulled into a crisis of loyalty and command. When Nazi Germany defeated France, the fate of the French fleet became one of the most urgent questions facing Britain. If French warships came under Axis control, they could threaten the balance at sea. Britain could not allow that to happen. But France had been an ally. Its sailors were not the enemy. And yet, after the armistice, no one could be certain which orders would be obeyed. Surcouf was in Britain at the time, undergoing work at Plymouth. In July 1940, British forces moved to seize French vessels in British ports, and aboard Surcouf, the operation turned violent. A confrontation broke out between British boarding parties and French sailors. Men were killed. Blood was shed not between France and Germany, but between former allies trapped inside the collapse of Europe. From then on, Surcouf carried more than weapons. It carried suspicion. Some of its crew eventually joined the Free French forces under Charles de Gaulle. The submarine became part of the Allied war effort, but it was never quite ordinary. It was French, but not Vichy. Allied, but not British. Powerful, but politically difficult. Its crew served under the shadow of a divided homeland, inside a vessel that had already seen violence from those on its own side. Soon after a controversial Free French operation at Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, Surcouf was ordered south. Its route would take it toward the Caribbean, through the Panama Canal, and onward into the Pacific, where the war had changed overnight after Pearl Harbor. Allied ships were being repositioned across the world. every vessel mattered. Every submarine was a weapon that could be used somewhere else. So Surcouf sailed toward Panama, and the waters ahead were no longer calm. By February 1942, the Caribbean and the approaches to the canal were filled with fear. German U-boats were striking into the Western Atlantic and nearby waters. Oil tankers and merchant ships were burning. Reports of submarines, real and imagined, moved through naval channels with the urgency of panic. In that atmosphere, a submarine on the surface at night was a dangerous thing to be, even an Allied one, especially one as unusual as Surcouf. On February 12, 1942, Surcouf left Bermuda, bound for the Panama Canal. It was under the command of frigate captain Georges-Louis Nicolas Blaisson. On board were more than 100 men, including French sailors and several British personnel. They were moving through waters where merchant captains feared torpedoes, aircraft crews hunted shadows, and the difference between friend and enemy could vanish in poor visibility. Somewhere north of Cristobal, near the entrance to the Panama Canal, Surcouf disappeared. No final message explained what was wrong. No survivor came back with the last minutes. No wreck has been conclusively found. The largest submarine of its era simply failed to arrive. For weeks, the loss remained blurred by wartime secrecy and uncertainty. Families received the kind of official language that confirms tragedy without answering grief. Surcouf was missing. Its crew was presumed lost. But the sea gave back nothing. Then came the report that would become the center of the mystery. On the night of February 18th to 19th, the American freighter Thomson Likes was steaming through the Caribbean in darkness. The region was on edge. A ship traveling alone had every reason to fear a U-boat. Lookouts watched the black water for wakes, periscopes, silhouettes. Anything that might mean death was close. At some point in the night, the freighter struck something. You are there on that darkened deck, surrounded by black water and the low vibration of engines pushing the ship forward. The horizon is almost invisible. Every shadow has weight. Every patch of sea might be nothing, or it might be the outline of a submarine waiting beneath the surface. You stare into the darkness with the same fear everyone carries now, that the ocean may open without warning. Then the hull shudders. Not a clean blow, not a visible collision with a ship under lights. Something lower, something partly hidden. Steel scrapes somewhere below, long enough for the sound to travel through the vessel like a warning. Men move toward the rail. Voices rise. For a moment, above the engine noise and the sea, there may be cries in the darkness, human, distant, impossible to place. But this is wartime. A submarine contact could be a trap. To stop could mean death. So the ship keeps moving. Not a ship clearly visible on the surface. Not wreckage easily identified. A partially submerged object. It scraped along the side and keel. The impact was serious enough to report. In the confusion, the crew believed they may have hit an enemy submarine. Some accounts say voices were heard in the water. Human sounds carried briefly over the dark sea. But Thomson Likes did not stop. In wartime, stopping after a suspected submarine contact could be fatal. A damaged U-boat might still be dangerous. Another submarine might be nearby. A merchant captain had to think of his own crew, his cargo, and the possibility that the entire scene was part of a larger threat. So the freighter continued, and later, the terrible possibility emerged. What if the object struck in the darkness was not a German submarine? What if it was Surcouf? The collision theory is the most grounded explanation. It fits the place. It fits the date. It fits the atmosphere. A huge submarine traveling on the surface, or partly submerged, difficult to see on a dark night, could have been struck by a freighter. If the impact opened the hull or damaged vital compartments, Surcouf may have gone down quickly, leaving only scattered voices in the water before silence returned. It is a simple theory, and that is part of its horror. Not sabotage, not conspiracy, not a secret mission. Just two vessels crossing the same black water in wartime, each shaped by fear, neither fully understanding what was in front of it until steel met steel. But even this explanation leaves unease behind. Surcouf was enormous. If Thomson-Likes struck it, why was the evidence not more definitive? Why was no debris field confirmed? Why did no survivor reach another vessel or shore? If voices were truly heard, were they from Surcouf's men or from something else entirely? And if the submarine sank there, why has its wreck never been identified with certainty? The Caribbean is not the deepest ocean on Earth, but it is deep enough to hide a broken hull. Currents disperse evidence. Wartime records are incomplete. Search priorities change. In 1942, ships were being lost so quickly that one mystery could be swallowed by 100 emergencies. Still, doubts remained, because there was another theory, a darker one. Some later accounts have suggested that Surcouf may not have been destroyed by Thomson-Likes at all. It may have been attacked from the air by Allied aircraft, misidentified as an enemy submarine in the same nervous region where German U-boats were operating. Imagine an aircraft crew scanning the sea in early morning light. Below them, a submarine shape. Long, dark, unfamiliar, perhaps damaged, perhaps unable to signal, perhaps simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. From above, through glare and haze, would Surcouf have been recognized? Its silhouette was unlike most submarines. Its size and turret could make it seem strange even to trained observers. In a region filled with reports of enemy activity, a strange submarine might not be treated as a puzzle. It might be treated as a target. If this theory is true, the tragedy becomes even more painful. A free French vessel, already marked by suspicion and displacement, destroyed not by the enemy, but by those fighting the same war. Yet this explanation has problems too. Wartime attack reports were often confused. Pilots frequently believed they had sunk submarines when they had only attacked shadows, oil slicks, or debris. The absence of a confirmed German loss in the area does not automatically prove that Surcouf was the target. And without a wreck, without recovered fragments, without survivors, the theory remains suspended between possibility and proof. Then there are the ideas that gather in the margins of wartime mysteries. Some have wondered whether Surcouf was deliberately destroyed because Allied commanders did not trust it. This suspicion feeds on real tensions. The violent seizure in Britain, the divided French Navy, the political complications of free French operations, and the submarine's unusual independence. But suspicion is not evidence. Unease is not a document. And war is chaotic enough that accident can look like conspiracy when the records are incomplete. Still, the reason these theories survive is not only because people love hidden plots. It is because Surcouf's story genuinely passed through zones of mistrust. Its ship had been seized by force. Its crew had lived through national collapse. Its final voyage took place just as the Allied war effort was reorganizing under pressure. It was surrounded by questions even before it vanished. And once a vessel like that disappears without a wreck, every unanswered question becomes a doorway. Surcouf's mystery is haunting because each explanation feels possible and none feels complete. If it was Thompson likes, then the last moments may have been brutally sudden. Men asleep below would have been thrown awake by impact, metal screaming through compartments, lights failing, water entering with unstoppable force. Those near exits may have fought upward into darkness, only to surface in oil, debris, and confusion. They may have seen the freighter moving away and realized the ship that struck them was not coming back. If it was aircraft, the ending may have unfolded under a pale morning sky. A damaged submarine on the surface, men trying to identify themselves, engines overhead, then bombs falling into the water, columns rising beside the hull, shockwaves crushing seams and plates. In that version, Surcouf's final enemy was not hatred, but error, the terrible speed with which war turns uncertainty into violence. If it was internal failure, the mystery becomes quieter. A mechanical casualty, flooding, loss of power, a navigation problem. Submarines are machines of balance. Air, water, trim, pressure, engines, batteries, everything must remain controlled. A small failure can become a chain can become a descent. And once a submarine loses its fight with buoyancy, the ocean does the rest. The men aboard Surcouf were not symbols to themselves. They were sailors. They lived inside steel corridors that smelled of oil, damp clothing, diesel fuel, and stale air. They slept beneath pipes and valves. They worked around weapons that seemed too large for the hull that carried them. Some were Free French, fighting for a homeland occupied and divided. Some were British personnel assigned into the machinery of alliance. All of them were carried toward the Pacific inside one of the strangest submarines ever built. In their final hours, they may have been thinking of the canal ahead, of the heat, of the war, of letters, of France, of home. They may not have known they were about to become a legend. And then something happened. That is the center of Surcouf. Not the gun turret, not the float plane, not even its size, but that blank space after its last known movement, where records become uncertain and the ocean takes control of the story. Lost submarine mysteries are different from ordinary shipwrecks because submarines are already secrets. A surface ship in distress can burn, drift, send flares, scatter lifeboats, leave wreckage behind. But a submarine's purpose is concealment. Its final disaster often happens inside a sealed world, beneath the sightline of history. When it fails, it may leave no visible wound on the sea at all. Surcouf was built to be seen and feared on the surface, yet its end may have been as invisible as any smaller submarines. A ripple, a patch of oil, a few cries in darkness, then nothing. Surcouf remains suspended between history and legend because it belonged to a moment when the world itself was unclear. France was divided. The Allies were strained. The Atlantic War was expanding. The Caribbean, usually imagined as warm and bright, had become a hunting ground of oil fires, torpedoes, blacked-out ships, and nervous patrols. There is something almost mythic in the shape of it. A sea raider named after an old corsair. A weapon too strange for the war it entered. A crew fighting under a flag of exile. A disappearance near one of the world's great passages between oceans. And a final mystery built not around the absence of theories, but around too many. Collision, misidentification, friendly fire, mechanical failure, wartime secrecy. Each answer reaches toward the truth. each falls short of touching it. And so, Surcouf endures not as a solved loss, but as a question with a steel silhouette. It reminds us that war does not only destroy through enemy action, it destroys through confusion, through haste, through fear, through incomplete information moving faster than human judgment. In peacetime, a dark shape in the water might be investigated. In wartime, it might be rammed, bombed, reported, misfiled, and forgotten until the people inside it have no voice left. That may be the most haunting possibility of all, that Surcouf did not vanish because no one saw it, but because someone did. Someone saw a shape in the night. Someone heard something in the water. Someone believed they had found the enemy. And by the time anyone understood what might have happened, the submarine was already gone. Somewhere in the dark, perhaps north of Panama, perhaps farther from certainty than anyone wants to admit, the remains of the giant submarine may still rest under layers of sediment and silence. No flag moves above it. No inscription marks its hull. No final report is carved into stone. Only the sea holds the last evidence. And until that wreck is found, if it ever is, Surcouf will remain what it became in 1942, a vast French shadow moving through a world at war, a submarine built like a legend, lost somewhere between accident and suspicion, between ally and enemy, between the surface and the deep, and still waiting in the darkness for history to decide what really happened. Story 3. The USS Dorado. Not every submarine lost in wartime darkness was a foreign giant like Surcouf. Some were newer, smaller, American, built not as legends, but as instruments of a war that had become so vast, so fast-moving, and so nervous that even the line between friend and enemy could blur in the moonlight. And in the Caribbean, far from the great convoy battles of the North Atlantic, far from the storm-black seas where U-boats stalked merchantmen and destroyers hunted shadows, another submarine vanished into a different kind of silence. Not in combat exactly, not in a known enemy attack, not in a wreck found and studied and explained, but somewhere along a wartime route toward Panama, in waters patrolled by American aircraft, watched by American ships, and guarded by American orders meant to keep her safe. The submarine was USS Dorado. And unlike so many lost vessels, her mystery does not begin with age, decay, or legend. It begins with something almost painfully ordinary. A new submarine, a planned voyage, a scheduled arrival, a protected passage through friendly waters. And then, nothing. Dorado did not limp into port damaged. She did not send a distress message. She did not surface later with a story of malfunction or near disaster. She simply disappeared, leaving behind a question so uncomfortable that official records could never fully bury it. Was USS Dorado lost to the enemy? Was she destroyed by accident? Or did an American aircraft, hunting for a German U-boat in the dark Caribbean sky, attack the wrong submarine and send one of its own beneath the waves? To understand why Dorado feels so haunting, we have to enter the Atlantic War at a moment when fear itself had become part of the machinery. By 1943, the United States was fighting across oceans. The Pacific was consuming ships and men in island campaigns, submarine patrols, and carrier battles that stretched across half the planet. But the Atlantic was still deadly. German U-boats had spent years prowling sea lanes, attacking convoys, slipping through gaps, and haunting the approaches to vital ports. The Caribbean, too, was not simply a warm background to the war. It was a strategic crossroads. Oil moved through it, supplies moved through it, convoys moved through it, and above all, the Panama Canal stood like one of the great arteries of the Allied world. A narrow passage joining oceans, so valuable that any threat to it carried immense consequences. If the canal were damaged, blocked, or mined, the movement of American naval power between the Atlantic and Pacific would become slower, more complicated, and more vulnerable. So the waters around it were watched carefully. Aircraft searched the sea. Patrol craft guarded approaches. Ships moved under restrictions, instructions, coded signals, and recognition procedures. But war, especially at sea, has a strange way of turning protection into danger. A submarine is meant to be hidden. That is its power. But in friendly waters, that same power can become a curse. To an aircraft crew scanning a moonlit ocean, a surfaced submarine might not look American or German. It might only look like a long, dark shape where no long, dark shape should be. A conning tower, a wake, a momentary silhouette in broken light, a radar contact moving through weather, a decision made in seconds. And on October 6, 1943, USS Dorado left New London, Connecticut, bound for the Panama Canal Zone. She was new, almost impossibly new. Her keel had been laid down at the Electric Boat Company in Groton, Connecticut in 1942. She was launched in May of 1943, commissioned later that summer, and placed under the command of Lieutenant Commander E.C. Schneider. She belonged to the Gato class, the workhorse line of American fleet submarines that would become famous in the Pacific. Long, powerful boats designed for endurance, stealth, and attack. To the men aboard her, Dorado was not yet an old veteran with a long combat record. She was a beginning, a fresh command, a vessel heading out into the war with machinery still new, routines still forming, and crewmen still crossing the invisible line between training and battle. Her name came from the Dorado, a swift, bright ocean fish, sometimes called the dolphin fish or mahi-mahi, known for its golden flash beneath the surface. It was a name that suggested speed, life, motion, but the submarine that carried it would have almost no time to become known. Dorado's voyage from New London to Panama should have been controlled and traceable. She was not sailing into enemy waters on an aggressive patrol. She was transiting, moving south down the Atlantic coast, then toward the Caribbean, on the way to the Canal Zone, where she would pass into the wider machinery of the war. There were procedures for this. Because friendly submarines were vulnerable to friendly attack, the Navy used restricted areas around their expected positions, moving sanctuaries designed to tell aircraft and surface forces where not to bomb unless they were absolutely certain of the target. These were not perfect shields, but they were meant to prevent exactly the kind of tragedy that Dorado may have suffered. A submarine on the surface could be placed within a corridor of protection. Aircraft could be told where she was supposed to be. Patrol crews could be warned that a friendly boat was moving through the area. The paper world of war, orders, charts, messages, coordinates, tried to impose safety on the chaos of the sea. But the sea does not read orders, and men under pressure do not always receive them correctly. Dorado was expected to reach Panama. She never did. At first, in wartime, lateness might not immediately mean catastrophe. Radio silence was common. Delays could happen. Weather, mechanical issues, navigational caution, evasive routing, all of these could slow a ship. And submarines were not ordinary ships. Their very nature made them difficult to track from the outside. But as time passed, the silence became harder to explain. Dorado had not been heard from after sailing. She did not appear at her expected point. She did not reach the rendezvous where she was supposed to be met and escorted towards safety near the canal zone. And soon, the Navy faced the cold, familiar ritual that accompanies a missing vessel. Searches were launched, routes were examined, signals were reviewed, enemy activity was investigated, aircraft reports were reread. A submarine that had existed clearly in schedules, rosters, and plotted positions began to dissolve into uncertainty. Somewhere between departure and arrival, Dorado had crossed out of the known world. The most haunting part of her story centers on the night of October 12, 1943. That night, over the Caribbean, an American patrol aircraft was operating in an area where German submarine activity was a real concern. The plane was a PBM Mariner, a large patrol flying boat used for long-range search and anti-submarine warfare. These aircraft were among the eyes of the wartime Atlantic, sweeping dark water for periscopes, wakes, shadows, and radar contacts. The crew was not imagining danger. German submarines had operated in the Caribbean. Enemy mine-laying was a possibility. U-boats were not distant mythology. They were real machines with real crews, capable of appearing where Allied planners least wanted them. And that night, there was indeed a German submarine in the broader story. U-214, a German U-boat connected with mine-laying operations near the approaches to Panama. This is one reason Dorado's case becomes so difficult, so tangled, and so eerie. There were not simply Americans imagining phantoms. There were real enemies nearby. There were real aircraft hunting them. There were real restrictions meant to protect a friendly submarine. And somewhere inside that overlapping darkness, Dorado disappeared. The patrol aircraft made contact with what it believed was an unidentified submarine. You are inside the patrol aircraft now, above a dark Caribbean that gives almost nothing back. The engines vibrate through the metal around you. Below, the ocean is not blue, not open, not beautiful. It is a black surface broken only by faint lines of moonlight and the occasional pale disturbance of water. You search because that is what the war has trained you to do. Search for shapes. Search for wakes. Search for the impossible outline that might become lethal if you let it go. Then someone sees it. A long mark on the sea. A shape where no shape should be. For a moment, it is not a nationality. It is not a name. It is only a submarine in darkness, and every second feels borrowed. You do not have the luxury of knowing what history will ask later. You have only the report, the position, the fear of a German U-boat near Panama, and the terrible pressure to act before the target disappears beneath the surface. And in that brief interval, uncertainty becomes an attack. In the strange half-visibility of night, with weather and moonlight complicating the scene, the crew interpreted the target as hostile. Believing the submarine to be outside the sanctuary area, they attacked. Depth charges and a bomb were dropped. To the men in the aircraft, it may have seemed like a successful or at least necessary action against an enemy boat. In anti-submarine warfare, hesitation could mean letting a U-boat escape. A surfaced submarine could dive within moments. Radar contacts could vanish. A wake could disappear. The ocean could close over evidence before anyone knew what had happened. But afterward, the question emerged with terrible force. What submarine had they attacked? The official picture was never simple. There were reports, timings, positions, signal procedures, and later investigations. There was also a second contact that night involving a submarine that exchanged fire or behaved in a way more clearly associated with U-214. This raised the possibility that the patrol aircraft may have encountered more than one submarine in the area. And if one of those submarines was U-214, what was the other? This is where Dorado becomes less like a conventional wartime loss and more like a ghost coordinate. Because no wreck has been found, no survivor testified, no recovered debris closed the case, no German report cleanly claimed her destruction, no American ship saw her go down. Instead, investigators were left to arrange fragments around an absence. Dorado's expected course placed her in the region. A friendly submarine was known to be moving through those waters. An American aircraft attacked an unidentified submarine. The submarine vanished forever, and the Navy's own inquiries left open the possibility, deeply unsettling and historically persistent, that Dorado had been lost by friendly fire. It is difficult to overstate the emotional weight of that idea. War already takes men into danger. A submarine crew understands that depth, pressure, enemy ships, mines, aircraft, and mechanical failure may all be waiting beyond the horizon. But there is something uniquely tragic about a vessel traveling under the protection of its own side, through a declared area of caution, only to be mistaken for the enemy. If Dorado was attacked by an American plane, her final moments may have unfolded in confusion on both sides. Above, in the cockpit, men saw a target. Below, on the submarine, men may have seen an aircraft they believed should know who they were. Perhaps Dorado was on the surface, charging batteries, moving through the night air with diesel engines turning and lookouts posted. Perhaps her crew heard engines overhead. Perhaps someone looked up and recognized the shape of an American patrol plane against the sky. Perhaps there was only seconds to understand that recognition had failed. Then came the attack. A flare, the sudden roar of aircraft, the water erupting, the concussive shock of explosives. For a submarine, depth charges did not need to strike directly to kill. Pressure waves could rupture hull plates, damage valves, shatter lights, crack seams, disable propulsion, or drive panic through the cramped steel body of the boat. A surfaced submarine caught by surprise was vulnerable in a way that feels almost unbearable. The very ocean that normally concealed it could become, in an instant, the force that crushed it. If Dorado had time to dive, that dive may not have saved her. If she remained surfaced, the damage may have been immediate. If she tried to signal, the signal may have been missed, misunderstood, or impossible. And if she sank quickly, the Caribbean would have erased the evidence with brutal efficiency. No long farewell, no final radio transmission, no lifeboats, no oil slick that survived long enough to be meaningful. Only the dark water closing over a new submarine and everyone aboard. But friendly fire is not the only theory. Like all unresolved wartime disappearances, Dorado has gathered possibilities around it. Some grounded, some speculative, all shaped by the fact that the wreck remains unfound. One possibility is enemy action. German U-boats were active in the Atlantic, and U-214's presence in the wider sequence naturally invites suspicion. Could Dorado have been torpedoed? Could a German submarine have encountered and destroyed her without the record surviving clearly? Could she have run into an enemy mine, especially given German interest in threatening the Panama approaches. The mine theory has long had a grim attraction because it would explain sudden silence. A mine does not require a dramatic surface battle. It does not require a chase. It can wait unseen, passive and patient, until a ship enters the wrong place at the wrong time. A submarine striking a mine could be destroyed so violently and suddenly that no distress call would ever be sent. But the more carefully the known movements and minefield details are examined, the more difficult that explanation becomes. Dorado's intended route and the location of known German mines do not align cleanly. Mines can drift, records can be imperfect, and wartime navigation is never as neat as post-war diagrams suggest. Still, the mine theory has never displaced the deeper suspicion raised by the aircraft incident. Another possibility is mechanical failure. Dorado was new, but new does not mean invulnerable. Submarines are complex machines, and the ocean is merciless towards small errors. A valve left unsecured, a battery problem, a diving accident, a fire, a flooding event, or a failure during routine operation could doom a boat with shocking speed. Even a well-built submarine depended on dozens of systems working correctly under pressure. A submarine can be lost without an enemy ever seeing it. The sea has claimed boats during training dives, patrols, and routine movements. Sometimes one mistake cascades into another. A mechanical issue becomes flooding. Flooding becomes loss of trim. Loss of trim becomes an uncontrolled descent. A crew fights in darkness with gauges, pumps, and valves, while the hull descends toward a depth it was never meant to survive. Could Dorado have suffered such an accident before ever reaching the area of the aircraft attack? It is possible. But here again, the timing is what keeps pulling the story back to October 12th. The patrol aircraft, the unidentified submarine, the protection area, the later inquiry, the missing boat. An ordinary mechanical loss would be tragic, but Dorado's case contains an event that feels too close to ignore. Weather has also been considered. Tropical waters can appear beautiful from a map and lethal in reality. Squalls, rough seas, low visibility, and sudden changes in wind and water could complicate navigation and recognition. Storm conditions could scatter search efforts, obscure wreckage, and distort aircraft observations. A submarine traveling on the surface in poor weather might be harder to identify, harder to signal, and easier to mistake for an enemy. But weather alone does not explain the full sequence. It may be part of the atmosphere, part of the confusion, part of the reason men in the sky and men at sea misunderstood one another. Not necessarily the killer, but perhaps the veil. And then there is the most uncomfortable theory of all. Not that the aircraft crew acted maliciously or recklessly or with any desire to harm their own side, but that a chain of imperfect information placed them in a situation where tragedy became possible. In wartime, disasters are often not born from a single mistake. They are assembled. A message slightly wrong, a boundary misunderstood, a recognition signal missed, a submarine where someone did not expect it, an enemy U-boat known or suspected nearby, a crew trained to attack quickly, a night sky, a black hull, a few minutes. That is what makes Dorado's story feel so human and so cold. It does not require conspiracy. It does not require monsters. It does not require betrayal. It only requires the machinery of war to be imperfect. And the machinery of war is always imperfect. When Dorado failed to arrive, the Navy had to examine what had happened in those waters. The inquiry did not reduce the loss to a single neat sentence. Instead, it recognized multiple possible causes, including operational casualty, enemy action, and attack by friendly forces. But the friendly fire possibility remained especially powerful because it had a specific incident attached to it. A plane had attacked, a submarine had disappeared, and the wreck was gone. For the families of the crew, this absence must have been devastating in a different way from a confirmed sinking. A confirmed sinking at least gives grief a shape. It gives a location, a cause, a story that can be repeated even through pain. But Dorado left behind a fog of technical language and uncertainty. Missing, presumed lost, possibly attacked, possibly enemy action, possibly operational casualty. Words that do not fully answer the simplest human question. What happened to them? Dorado was officially declared overdue and presumed lost in late October 1943. The men aboard were gone. Their submarine joined the long list of vessels on eternal patrol, a phrase often used for submariners who never returned, as if the boat and crew continue their mission somewhere beneath the sea. But Dorado's eternal patrol has a special loneliness. Many American submarines lost in the Pacific went down in combat against Japanese forces, their likely positions reconstructed from enemy records, patrol reports, and later research. Some have been found, others remain lost, but their operational context is clearer. Dorado belonged to a rarer category. She was one of the few American submarines lost in the Atlantic theater during the Second World War, and her disappearance occurred not in the dramatic image of battle, but in transit, near the guarded approaches of a friendly strategic zone. That makes the mystery feel quieter, and somehow more haunting, because Dorado did not vanish while stalking enemy shipping in the far Pacific. She vanished while trying to reach the next stage of her service. She was not an old warrior nearing the end of a long career. She was newly made, newly crewed, newly sent into history. And history swallowed her almost immediately. Imagine the submarine leaving New London in early October, the air on the Connecticut coast beginning to cool, the war far away and yet everywhere. Families, dock workers, officers, crewmen moving through the routines of departure. A new Gato-class submarine sliding out from the familiar world of the shipyard and training base toward open water. For the men aboard, the future may have seemed dangerous, but also defined. Panama first, then perhaps the Pacific, then patrols, targets, war stories, letters home, survival, luck. Every submarine crew carried private hopes inside a public mission. Some men may have been thinking of promotion, some of home, some of proving themselves, some of nothing more dramatic than the next watch, the next meal, the next order. The Dorado's interior would have been close, metallic, and alive with machinery. Diesel engines, battery compartments, torpedoes, bunks, gauges, pipes, valves, and narrow passageways where men learned to move around one another with practiced economy. Submarines are often described as machines, but inside them they are almost like sealed communities. Every man depending on every other man, every sound meaningful, every smell familiar. Oil, metal, sweat, paint, coffee, electrical heat, sea air when the hatch opened. On the surface, Dorado could breathe. Below, she became a pressure vessel of human nerve and engineering. And somewhere on that southbound voyage, the record thins. That is one of the strangest things about lost submarines. At the moment of departure, they are intensely documented. Names, dates, orders, shipyard records, movements, communications. But once they are beyond sight, the world depends on signals and arrivals. If neither comes, certainty collapses. Dorado sailed. Dorado was expected. Dorado did not arrive. Between those three facts lies the entire abyss. Searchers found no answer. The Caribbean, for all its color and warmth, can conceal wreckage as completely as any polar sea. Depths change. Currents move debris. Coral, silt, and time alter what remains. A submarine wreck may lie upright, broken, buried, scattered, or hidden on a slope no sonar has yet interpreted correctly. It may be far from where calculations suggest. Wartime navigation errors, drift, evasive movement, attack damage, and sinking trajectories can all move a final resting place away from the clean lines drawn afterward. That is why Dorado's wreck remains so important. A wreck could transform the mystery. If found, it might show blast damage consistent with depth charges. It might suggest a mine. It might show implosion after uncontrolled descent. It might reveal whether hatches were open or closed, whether she was surfaced or submerged, whether damage came from above, below, or within. It might not answer everything, but it would anchor the story to the seabed. Without the wreck, Dorado remains suspended between scenarios, not fully solved, not fully unknowable. A case with enough evidence to point in a terrible direction, but not enough physical proof to close the door. This is what separates Dorado from mysteries that are pure legend. Her story is not built from rumor alone. It exists in the hard administrative world of naval procedure and inquiry. The troubling possibility of friendly fire is not an afterthought invented decades later for drama. It is woven into the official uncertainty surrounding the loss. And that makes it more unsettling, not less. Because the mystery is not whether strange forces existed. The mystery is whether ordinary forces, fear, miscommunication, pressure, and imperfect recognition, aligned in exactly the wrong way. There is also a moral silence around such cases. Friendly fire is one of the most painful truths of war. It exposes the limits of control. It reminds us that uniforms, flags, orders, and codes do not always protect men from their own side. It forces institutions to confront the difference between blame and cause. The crew of the patrol aircraft may have believed they were defending the canal approaches. The crew of Dorado may have believed they were following orders through protected waters. Both could be doing their duty. Both could be caught in the same machine, and only one returned to tell its version. That imbalance matters. An aircraft lands. Its crew reports what they saw, what they did, what they believed. A submarine sinks. Its crew leaves no testimony. The dead become evidence. The living become witnesses. And history must decide what to do with the silence between them. In Dorado's case, the silence has lasted more than 80 years. Searchers, historians, and submarine enthusiasts have continued to examine the case. Routes have been reconstructed, logs compared, German records studied, aircraft positions analyzed. The possibility of U-214's involvement has been weighed against the known attack. Minefield theories have been revisited and challenged. Modern researchers have tried to narrow the likely area where Dorado may have gone down. But the Caribbean is large, and the ocean is indifferent to human need. Even when a probable area is proposed, finding a submarine wreck is not simple. The seafloor is vast. Sonar images require interpretation. Natural formations can mimic wreckage. Wreckage can be broken or buried. Funding, time, weather, equipment, and permissions all shape what can be searched. And so Dorado remains absent. There is something almost symbolic in that absence. The submarine's name suggested brightness, a golden fish flashing in the blue. But her story is a study in darkness. Dark water, dark aircraft silhouettes, dark uncertainty, dark official language, and perhaps most haunting of all, the possibility that Dorado's crew may have died without understanding why they were under attack. If the friendly fire scenario is correct, one can imagine a terrible moment of disbelief aboard the submarine. Men hearing explosions close by, feeling the hull shudder, realizing the threat came not from a German destroyer or enemy aircraft, but from the sky above a supposed sanctuary. Did they know? Did they have time to know? Did anyone shout that it was one of ours? Or was it all too fast? A flash, a concussion, a breach, a plunge. In submarine disasters, the final experience depends on the nature of the damage. Some losses are instantaneous. Others unfold over minutes or hours, with crews trapped in compartments, fighting flooding, trying to surface, trying to send signals, trying to survive in air that grows hot and thin. Dorado's end is unknown, and because it is unknown, imagination tries to fill the space. But the most respectful answer may be the simplest. We do not know how long they fought. We do not know what they saw. We do not know whether they died on the surface, during a dive, or on the bottom. We only know they did not come home. And in a story like Dorado's, restraint matters. The mystery is already powerful enough without turning uncertainty into fantasy. The facts themselves carry the weight. A new submarine left port. She was given a route. Friendly forces were warned. An aircraft attacked an unidentified submarine. Dorado vanished. The wreck was never found. And official conclusions never erased the possibility that America had destroyed one of its own boats. That is enough. Enough to make the Caribbean chart feel haunted. Enough to make the night of October 12th feel like a page that cannot be turned. Enough to make Dorado's name linger wherever submarine losses are remembered. And yet, like Surcouf, Dorado also belongs to a larger pattern of wartime confusion in the Atlantic. The Second World War created a world where ships moved under blackout, aircraft searched in darkness, submarines hid by design, and information traveled through fragile channels. Every side used deception. Every side feared ambush. Every silhouette could be fatal. Every hesitation could be judged later as a mistake. Surcouf vanished in a region of collision, suspicion, and misidentification. Dorado vanished in a region of patrols, sanctuaries, and possible friendly fire. Different navies, different vessels, different circumstances. But both stories occupy the same shadowed boundary. The place where an ally might be mistaken for an enemy, where a submarine's greatest defense becomes its greatest danger, where the ocean receives the evidence before anyone on land can understand what has happened. And perhaps that is why Dorado feels less like a closed naval loss and more like an open wound beneath the water. Because a wreck would matter, a photograph would matter, a confirmed hull number, a broken pressure hull, a debris field, a scar on the seabed. Any of it would pull the story out of speculation and into physical truth. Until then, Dorado exists in coordinates, testimony, inquiry, and absence. A ghost submarine in the Caribbean. A new boat that never reached her war. A crew carried from departure into silence. A possible friendly fire tragedy that no official phrasing can make less painful. Somewhere, perhaps, her hull still rests in darkness. Maybe on a slope of seabed far from the plotted line. Maybe near the place where the patrol aircraft made its attack. Maybe buried in silt, unrecognized by passing sonar. Maybe broken in a way that would finally tell us what struck her. Maybe intact enough that her name could still be read if a light ever passed across the right curve of steel. And if that day comes, the mystery may change. It may become clearer. It may become harder. It may confirm what many have long suspected, or it may reveal that the truth was something no one fully imagined. But for now, USS Dorado remains what she became in October of 1943, a brand new submarine that sailed toward Panama and vanished before her story had truly begun. A wartime shadow moving through waters that were supposed to be watched and protected. A vessel caught between enemy threat and friendly fear, between procedure and confusion, between a patrol aircraft's report and a missing crew's silence. And somewhere in the Caribbean dark, still waiting for the sea to give back the answer it has kept all these years. Story 4. The submarine that entered a mined sea and never came home. Not every lost submarine disappeared in the open emptiness of an ocean crossing. Some vanished much closer to war itself, not while moving toward a distant patrol station like Dorado, but after entering waters already seeded with danger, watched by enemy aircraft, guarded by coastal batteries, crossed by convoys, and darkened by the invisible threat of mines. Dorado's mystery belongs to the uneasy space between protection and mistake, to a submarine that may have been destroyed by the very forces meant to defend the sea around her. But the next mystery takes us back to the Pacific, to a narrow and haunted corner of the war where the ocean was not just deep, but crowded with unseen hazards. Here, in the waters north of Australia and east of the Great Island chains of Southeast Asia, American submarines moved through passages where charts could not always be trusted, where minefields lay silent beneath the surface, and where even a routine mechanical flaw could become fatal once the hatch was shut and the boat slipped below. This is the story of USS Capelin, a new submarine that returned from her first patrol wounded, went back out almost immediately, and then passed into one of the most dangerous seas of the Second World War, never to come home. In late 1943, the Pacific War was entering one of its most relentless phases. The early shock of Japanese expansion had been answered by Allied counter-offensives stretching across island chains, jungle coasts, coral seas, and remote anchorages. American submarines had become some of the most important hunters in that vast campaign, moving far ahead of the fleet, slipping into Japanese-controlled waters, and attacking the supply lines that kept distant garrisons alive. They operated in a world of patience and pressure. For days at a time, they might see nothing but horizon, rain, and moonlight. Then, in a matter of minutes, the ocean could become a battlefield. A periscope raised at dawn, smoke on the horizon, the silhouette of a freighter, the sudden need to calculate distance, speed, angle, and escape. But by 1943, the Japanese had also learned to fear the submarine. Convoys were guarded more closely. Aircraft searched from the sky. Patrol craft listened for propellers below. And in certain passages, the enemy laid mines, weapons that needed no crew, no warning, and no final confrontation. A mine was patient. It could wait in darkness for days, months, even years. It made no sound that a sailor could hear. It offered no target to shoot back at. It did not need to find the submarine. It only needed the submarine to pass close enough. And into this kind of war came Capelin. USS Capelin was a Balao-class submarine, built at Portsmouth Navy Yard in Maine and commissioned in June of 1943. She belonged to a generation of American submarines designed for long-range patrols across the vast distances of the Pacific. On the surface, she looked like a weapon of confidence, long, narrow, purposeful, with a dark hull built to move quietly across thousands of miles of sea. But inside, a submarine was never just machinery. It was a sealed world, a place of diesel fumes, warm steel, electrical cables, condensation, valves, bunks, torpedo racks, gauges, battery compartments, and men living shoulder to shoulder in a space where privacy almost disappeared. Every sound mattered. Every vibration could become a warning. Every hatch, pump, plane, tube, and cable had to work, because beneath the surface there was no easy forgiveness. Caplin's commanding officer was Lieutenant Commander Elliot E. Marshall, and by the autumn of 1943, he and his crew had brought the new submarine into the Southwest Pacific, operating out of Darwin, Australia. Darwin was no peaceful rear base. It had already been bombed by Japanese aircraft earlier in the war, and it sat near the edge of the immense, fractured sea lanes that led north toward the Netherlands East Indies, the Moluccas, the Celebes Sea, and the islands guarding the approaches to the Philippines. For submariners, Darwin was a threshold. To the south lay a harbour, repairs, supplies, orders, and the fragile comfort of land. To the north lay patrol areas filled with enemy shipping, shallow passages, tropical squalls, reefs, patrol craft, aircraft, and the possibility that some danger was waiting beneath the surface long before the submarine arrived. Caplin's first war patrol began at the end of October 1943. Her assigned waters took her into the Molucca Sea, the Flores Sea, and the Banda Sea, a complex maritime maze of islands, deep basins, narrow straits, and enemy routes. This was not the clean, open geometry of a blank ocean chart. It was a broken region where land rose suddenly out of the water, where currents could be unpredictable, where weather moved fast, and where a submarine had to balance aggression with caution. On November 11th, during that first patrol, Caplin attacked and sank a Japanese cargo ship near Ambon Island. It was the kind of success submarine crews were sent out to achieve. One more enemy vessel removed from the supply web. One more interruption in Japan's attempt to hold its far-flung empire together. But Caplin's first patrol was short. After only 17 days at sea, she returned to Darwin on November 16th with problems that could not be ignored. The record lists 3 mechanical concerns: a defective conning tower hatch mechanism, excessively noisy bow planes, and a defective radar tube. Each of those details feels technical at first, almost ordinary in the language of wartime maintenance. But on a submarine, there is no such thing as a small flaw once the boat is in enemy waters. The conning tower hatch was not just a door. It was one of the barriers between the living submarine and the sea outside. If it failed, jammed, leaked, or could not be secured correctly, the consequences could become catastrophic in seconds. The bow planes were part of the submarine's ability to dive, level, and control its depth. If they were too noisy, they could betray the boat to enemy listeners. If they malfunctioned, they could affect how cleanly the submarine moved beneath the surface, especially during a rapid dive or while trying to evade attack. The radar tube mattered too. Radar was vision in darkness and weather, an electronic sense that could detect shapes beyond what human eyes could see. In the night patrols of the Pacific, when submarines often surfaced to move faster and recharge batteries, radar could mean the difference between spotting a target and being surprised by one. Kaplan had done her job, but she had come back showing signs of strain. The flaws were reportedly corrected to the satisfaction of her commanding officer. And then, almost immediately, she was sent back out. On November 17, 1943, just one day after returning to Darwin, Kaplan departed on her second war patrol. That detail is one of the quietest and most haunting in the story. There was no long pause, no extended rest, no slow, careful rebuilding of confidence. A submarine with recent mechanical issues had entered port, been repaired, and gone back to sea. To the men aboard, this may not have seemed unusual. War rarely allowed perfect conditions. Submarines were needed. Patrol areas had to be covered. Enemy supply lines had to be attacked. Crews understood that danger was part of the duty, and mechanical problems, once repaired, were meant to be trusted. But in hindsight, that single day in Darwin feels like a narrow ledge between two worlds. On one side, Kaplan was still visible, tied to the pier, reachable, alive, her crew walking her decks, her machinery opened and checked, her flaws named and addressed. On the other side, she was already moving towards silence. Her second patrol took her toward the Molucca Sea and the Celebes Sea, with instructions to pay particular attention to areas including Kauai Bay, Morotai Strait, Davao Gulf, and trade routes around Siaue Island, Sangi Island, the Talaud Islands, and Sarangani Island. Even the names sound like points on a forgotten wartime map. Islands and passages scattered between Indonesia and the southern Philippines. Places where the Pacific narrows and folds into itself, where the ocean is interrupted by volcanic land, reefs, coastal watch stations, and routes that had once served trade, but now carried fuel, ammunition, soldiers, and fear. For a submarine, this was a hunting ground, but it was also a trap. The same geography that allowed a submarine to ambush enemy shipping also gave the enemy places to hide, patrol, mine, and listen. A submarine in those waters had to move through restricted spaces. It had to consider depth. It had to consider currents. It had to consider the possibility of aircraft during the day and escorts at night. And beneath all of it was the unknown condition of Kaplan herself. Were the repairs truly complete? Did the conning tower hatch operate perfectly after leaving Darwin? Were the bow planes still noisy, or had the problem returned under strain? Did the radar function reliably in the humid, violent atmosphere of the tropics? The records cannot answer those questions. They only tell us that Kaplan sailed. And for a while at least, she was still out there. One of the most important fragments in the mystery comes from another American submarine, USS Bonefish. In early December 1943, Bonefish was operating in the same broad region. According to accounts of the patrol, Bonefish sighted what appeared to be an American submarine in the area assigned to Kaplan. The unidentified submarine quickly dived, likely after sighting Bonefish. Bonefish then attempted to communicate by sonar using Commander Marshall's nickname, Steam, as a way of identifying the message. The other submarine acknowledged. If that contact was truly Kaplan, then she was still alive around December 2nd. And this matters enormously because it complicates one of the possible explanations for her loss. Japanese records studied after the war mention an attack on a supposed American submarine on November 23rd off Kauai Bay, Halmahera. Their attacking vessel was the Japanese mine layer Wakataka. The report described an attack that produced columns of oily black water, along with fragments such as wood and cork splinters, and later a raft. At first glance, that seems chilling. An enemy attack in Kaplan's patrol area, a submarine target, oil in the water, fragments rising from the sea, a raft found afterward. It has all the pieces of an ending. But the war rarely leaves clean answers. The Japanese report also indicates uncertainty, and some interpretations suggest the contact evidence was not conclusive. Even more importantly, if Bonefish truly encountered Kaplan on December 2nd, then the November 23rd attack could not have destroyed her. At most, it may have been an attack on another contact, a false contact, or possibly an engagement with Kaplan that she survived. That is where the mystery deepens, because Kaplan may have been seen after the attack that might have killed her, which means either the attack was not Kaplan or it was Kaplan and she escaped, only to vanish afterward for another reason. After the Bonefish contact, there was no clear message from Kaplan. No triumphant patrol report, no distress call, no final position that led rescuers to wreckage. She was expected to leave her patrol area at dark on December 6th. When she failed to return or make contact, the Navy attempted to reach her by radio on December 9th. There was no response. In submarine warfare, silence could mean many things. A boat might remain quiet to avoid detection. A radio might be damaged. A transmission might fail. A commander might choose not to break radio silence because enemy forces were nearby. But there comes a moment when silence changes character. It stops being tactical. It becomes absence. For Kaplan, that moment arrived quietly. A message sent into the Pacific received nothing back. Somewhere north of the Celebes, or in the Molucca Passage, or in the Molucca Sea, the submarine had disappeared. The official language surrounding her loss is restrained. The Navy could say only that she was probably lost in the Celebes Sea, the Molucca Passage, or the Molucca Sea. The cause remained unknown. That uncertainty is what makes Kaplan so haunting. There are several possible endings. Each one is plausible. None can be proven. The first theory is that Kaplan struck a Japanese mine. This may be the most silently terrifying possibility because it would have left almost no time for recognition, fear, or action. Japanese minefields are now known to have been placed in various positions along the north coast of Celebes, modern Sulawesi, within the broad area where Kaplan was operating. These minefields were not necessarily obvious to American submariners at the time. Intelligence was imperfect. Mine charts were incomplete. The exact placement of enemy mines could be discovered only through reports, captured documents, post-war records, or tragedy. A submarine moving submerged through mined water would be terribly vulnerable. On the surface, a ship might sight floating danger under certain conditions. But submerged, in restricted waters, a submarine's world was instruments, sound, depth, and calculated movement. A moored mine, suspended below the surface, could wait in the black water like a thought no one had spoken aloud. If Kaplan struck one, the explosion may have breached the hull instantly. There may have been no distress signal because there was no time to send one. No survivors because the sea entered too quickly. No wreckage because the submarine sank where few could search, and where currents, depth, and wartime secrecy swallowed the evidence. The mine theory fits the geography. It fits the later knowledge of Japanese defenses. It fits the suddenness of the disappearance. But it cannot explain everything, because without the wreck, there is no scarred hull, no blast pattern, no confirmed minefield coordinate tied to her final moment. Only possibility. The second theory is that Kaplan was destroyed by enemy attack. The Wakataka report remains the most obvious candidate, even with its problems. If the November 23rd encounter involved Kaplan, perhaps she was damaged rather than sunk. Perhaps the attack affected her hull, planes, or hatch. Perhaps she survived long enough to move on, only for earlier damage to become fatal days later. Submarines were built to endure punishment, but not all damage announced itself immediately. A near miss from a depth charge could jar machinery, warp fittings, crack components, or create leaks that might worsen under pressure. A submarine could limp away from an attack believing it had survived, only to discover later that something essential had been weakened. If Kaplan had already shown mechanical problems before her second patrol, even a minor attack could have turned uncertainty into disaster. A hatch that had been repaired might fail under strain. Bow planes that had once been noisy might malfunction under depth pressure. A damaged radar could leave the boat blind on the surface. And if those flaws converged in hostile waters, Kaplan's end may not have come from one dramatic blow, but from a chain of mechanical misfortunes unfolding in the dark. This leads to the third theory, that Kaplan's own machinery betrayed her. The conning tower hatch is especially haunting. Submariners depended on watertight integrity with an almost sacred intensity. A hatch that did not secure correctly could become a lethal weakness. If Kaplan attempted to dive quickly, perhaps after sighting an aircraft, patrol craft, or another submarine, and the hatch failed to seal, water could pour into the conning tower. The submarine might lose buoyancy, electrical systems, control, or precious seconds. A boat caught in an emergency dive with a faulty hatch would be in terrible danger. There would be alarms, shouted orders, the rush of men moving through tight compartments, the sound of ballast tanks, the angle of the deck changing beneath their feet, and then perhaps the wrong sound. Water where there should not be water. The bow planes offer another possibility. If they malfunctioned during a dive, Kaplan might have lost depth control. In shallow or restricted waters, that could mean striking the bottom. In deeper water, it could mean descending below safe depth before the crew could recover. A submarine that exceeded its crush depth did not sink like a normal ship. It was destroyed by pressure. The hull would groan first, then deform, then fail, and the ocean would close it in. But again, there is no wreck to confirm this, no record of a final dive, no debris field, no message from the crew describing worsening trouble. Only the knowledge that the boat had returned from patrol with mechanical issues, went back out after repairs, and never returned. There is another possibility too, a combination of events. Kaplan may not have been lost to a mine alone, or mechanical failure alone, or enemy attack alone. She may have been operating in mined waters, under threat of aircraft, after recent repairs, with enemy patrols nearby, while navigating the dangerous island passages of a contested sea. One problem could have forced a reaction that made another problem fatal. An aircraft sighting might have forced a hurried dive. A hurried dive might have stressed the hatch or planes. Mechanical trouble might have made her louder. Being louder might have attracted patrol craft. Patrol craft might have forced her deeper. A deeper dive might have taken her into a mine, a seabed obstruction, or beyond the margin of recovery. In the official record, a submarine disappears as a date, a place, and a cause unknown. But inside that unknown, there may have been a sequence, a first warning, a second failure, a decision made quickly, a few minutes of controlled emergency, then confusion, then darkness. This is what makes submarine mysteries different from other disappearances at sea. When a surface ship is lost, wreckage may drift, oil may spread, lifeboats may be found, survivors may cling to rafts, a last flare might be seen, a wireless distress call transmitted, a final course reconstructed. But a submarine can vanish completely. It can be destroyed below the surface without ever breaking the skin of the sea. Its last battlefield may be hidden hundreds of feet down, leaving no visible wound above. For the families waiting at home, this was perhaps the cruelest part. Capelin did not return with a story of battle. She did not send a final message explaining her fate. There was no known grave, no clear coordinate, no recovered wreck to visit in the imagination. Only a missing boat, and 76 men gone with her. Their lives had narrowed into a steel hull somewhere in the Pacific, and then that hull had narrowed into silence. The human side of Capelin's story is easy to lose among patrol areas and mechanical details, but it is the part that gives the mystery its weight. A submarine crew in 1943 was made up of men who understood risk, but not necessarily destiny. They lived in a world of routines: watches, meals, maintenance, drills, torpedo checks, battery readings, listening posts, engine noise, the constant discipline of keeping a warship alive. They slept in narrow bunks, often near torpedoes. They wrote letters when they could. They joked, complained, waited, sweated, and listened. They learned the sounds of their own boat so well that a new vibration could draw attention like a voice in the dark. When Capelin returned to Darwin, some of them may have felt relief. The first patrol was over. They had made a kill. They had survived. Repairs were being made. Perhaps there was confidence that the problems were minor, the kind every warship encountered and overcame. Then came the order to go back out. The crew would have prepared as crews always did. Supplies loaded, torpedoes checked, fuel taken on, charts reviewed, engines tested, hatches shut, lines cast off, Darwin receding behind them, and then the sea ahead. There is something particularly unsettling about a submarine leaving harbor after repairs. It carries with it a question that no inspection can fully answer. Will everything hold once the boat is under pressure again? On the surface, the answer can seem yes. At the pier, the machinery works, the hatch shuts, the planes move, the radar returns. But the ocean is the real test. Depth, vibration, temperature, enemy danger, fatigue. All of these can reveal flaws that port cannot. Capelin passed that test for some number of days. She reached her area. She may have been seen by bonefish. She may have acknowledged a sonar message sent in the dark language of submarines. And then she vanished into a region where the map itself becomes uncertain. The places associated with her disappearance, the Celebes Sea, the Molucca Passage, the Molucca Sea, are not merely names. They form a world of deep water and tight passages between islands, a maritime borderland where ocean basins meet volcanic chains and where wartime routes once threaded through danger. In daylight, those waters can be beautiful, blue and green, broken by islands, reefs, and tropical weather. But in wartime, beneath the surface, they became a hidden maze. A submarine commander moving there had to think not only in miles, but in depth contours, traffic lanes, enemy anchorages, possible minefields, aircraft range, moon phase, and escape routes. Every decision contained risk. To get close enough to attack, a submarine had to enter the enemy's reach. To survive, it had to disappear again before the enemy could answer. Kaplan's mission was built on that balance. She was sent to hunt, but somewhere, the hunter became the missing. What happened after the last contact remains one of those wartime voids that resists closure. Perhaps she was running submerged near the north coast of Sulawesi when the mine found her. Perhaps the explosion came without warning, a single violent rupture in the dark, followed by the instant collapse of order. Perhaps she was stalking a convoy when an escort detected her, forcing her down, trapping her beneath depth charges until something gave way. Perhaps an aircraft saw her on the surface at dawn, dropped bombs, and left only a brief disturbance that was never correctly recorded. Perhaps a repaired hatch failed during a crash dive. Perhaps the bow planes jammed and the submarine angled downward beyond recovery. Perhaps some unknown underwater obstruction, an unmapped hazard, or a combination of battle damage and mechanical weakness ended her in a way no record ever captured. There are mysteries where the number of theories feels like abundance. Kaplan's theories feel different. They feel like doors opening into rooms with no light. Behind each one is a possible ending, and behind every ending is the same final silence. The mine, the attack, the hatch, the bow planes, the sea itself. Each explanation is close enough to be believed, yet incomplete enough to remain unsatisfying. And that is why Kaplan's disappearance has endured. Not because nothing is known, but because just enough is known to make the unknown sharper. We know she was new. We know she had already completed one patrol. We know she came back with mechanical defects. We know those defects were considered repaired. We know she left Darwin on November 17th. We know her patrol area placed her near some of the most dangerous waters of the campaign. We know Japanese minefields existed along parts of the coast within the broader zone where she operated. We know Japanese records include at least one attack on a submarine in the area, though whether it was Kaplan remains uncertain. We know Bonefish may have encountered her after that attack. We know radio calls later received no answer. And we know she never returned. All the pieces sit on the table like fragments from a wreck that has never been found. But they do not assemble into a final shape. Kaplan is not a mystery of ghosts, legends, or impossible lights. It is a mystery of war at sea in its purest, coldest form. A machine, a crew, a mission, a dangerous passage, and an ending hidden beneath water no one could search completely. And yet, because the facts are so restrained, the imagination fills the empty space. One can picture the submarine moving at night on the surface, engines rumbling, batteries charging, black water rolling away from the bow, lookouts scanning the horizon under a sky crowded with stars. Then the order to dive. Men moving quickly but calmly. The hatch secured. The boat slipping beneath the surface. Sound changing, light fading. The sea closing overhead. Somewhere ahead, a mine may be waiting. Or an escort may be listening. Or a repaired mechanism may already be beginning to fail. Then the record stops. No one knows whether the end came instantly or slowly. No one knows whether the crew understood what had happened. No one knows whether Kaplan rests upright on the seabed, broken by explosion, or scattered across a slope, or buried beneath sediment, or still hidden in a place so remote and difficult that even modern searchers have not yet touched it. The war moved on without her, as wars always do. Other submarines left port. Other patrols were assigned. Other ships were sunk. Other crews returned, and others did not. In the vast accounting of the Pacific campaign, Capelin became one more lost boat in the silent service's long and costly ledger. But for those who look closely, her story refuses to fade into a simple line of history. Because Capelin did not vanish in total ignorance. She vanished surrounded by clues: a repaired hatch, noisy bowplanes, a defective radar tube, a Japanese attack report, a possible bonefish contact, known minefields, a failed radio call. Each clue points somewhere, none points all the way. And so, Capelin remains suspended between explanations. If she struck a mine, then her end was a hidden collision with a weapon meant to wait unseen. If she was attacked, then somewhere in Japanese records may lie a distorted echo of her final battle. If her machinery failed, then the danger may have been carried with her from Darwin, sealed inside the boat before she ever reached the patrol area. And if the truth is some combination of all three, then Capelin's fate may be even harder to recover. Not one cause, but a convergence of small failures and large dangers in a sea already prepared to kill. Today, the waters where she disappeared still hold their silence. Ships pass above them. Currents move between the islands. The names on the wartime charts have changed for many who live there now, and the old patrol zones have become history. But somewhere beneath that surface may still lie the evidence. A section of pressure hull, a twisted plane, a hatch damaged by force, a scatter of debris near an old mine line, a submarine resting in the dark with 76 men still aboard. Until that wreck is found, if it ever is, Capelin's final moments remain beyond reach. Her story ends not with a confirmed explosion, not with a recovered log, not with a survivor's account, but with a submarine leaving Darwin after repairs, entering a mined and guarded sea, possibly answering another American boat in the darkness, and then falling silent forever. And perhaps that is what makes USS Capelin so haunting. She was not lost in some ancient age of sail, when maps were incomplete and storms were the only explanation needed. She was lost in a modern war of radios, radar, patrol reports, coded orders, and mechanical records. And still, the ocean kept her. Somewhere in the Pacific dark, beyond the certainty of charts and beyond the reach of memory, Capelin waits at the edge of several possible endings. A submarine that may have been killed by a mine, or by an enemy attack, or by the quiet return of a flaw everyone believed had been fixed. And until the sea gives back the wreck, the last chapter remains unwritten. Not a final report, not a solved loss, but a silent patrol still moving through history toward a coordinate no one has found. The ocean has always kept its dead quietly. Some vessels are found decades later, resting in silence beneath the waves. Others remain only as coordinates, radio logs, theories, and names carved into memorials. The stories we explored today are not just tales of lost machines. They are stories of crews who descended into darkness and never came home. Of submarines swallowed by war, accident, confusion, and forces no investigation could fully untangle. From the vanished AE-1 to the giant shadow of Surcouf, from the unanswered fate of Dorado to the last silence of Capelin, each mystery reminds us that even when wreckage is found, the truth can remain buried deeper still. Because beneath the surface, history does not always end with answers. Sometimes it ends with pressure, darkness, and a final signal that never reaches shore. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, make sure to subscribe and check out our other documentaries for more forgotten mysteries, lost ships, and unexplained stories from the depths of history. Thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, stay safe.